Can one album change the history of several different music genres? Passion, Peter Gabriel's 1989 double LP, has.
Has it?
Starting out as the soundtrack of Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ, it opened new doors for film music composers. At the same time, it might be the highest achievement of the world music movement in the 1980s. And it created a new way to make ambient music, one that has rarely been pursued since, and understandably so given the scope and the ambition of the project. Hello top hatters and newcomers, this is Simon Mas, your friend with a lot of claims to back up and a limited time to do it too. Shall we start? The features of a work of art are shaped by its origins. That's the case here too. The story of Passion began in 1983, as I said in the video about another Peter Gabriel soundtrack, Birdie. It was then that director Martin Scorsese first approached Peter. Scorsese wanted Gabriel to score music for his new film, The Last Temptation of Christ. Gabriel immediately accepted, but then the proposed budget and the protests of the usual noisy minorities, your usual intransigent, holy text-wielding, illiteral, dog-abiding, screaming fanatic type, scared Paramount's owners away. Scorsese was left without support, and the film was put on the back burner.
Oh dear.
3 years later, in 1986, Universal picked up the project, and Scorsese went back to Gabriel. The request was straightforward but not simple. You see, Scorsese wanted Gabriel to deliver something special, a soundscape that was ancient and contemporary at the same time, belonging to the place where the action was set, and yet being universal. Not your usual film commission there. Well, Gabriel responded immersing himself in the work and coming up with 3 elements that contributed in making Passion the masterwork it is. The first element is what made Passion a history-make world music album. Contrary to what he had done for Birdie, Peter decided not to work alone. He tapped into his personal contacts and into those of the WOMAD festival he had helped put together, gathering an incredible array of artists from all over the world. Correct me in the comments section if I'm mistaken, but this was the first time that so many musicians coming from different backgrounds worked together on the same project. Gabriel shared studio space with Egyptian percussionist master Hossam Ramzi, Indian violin innovator Shankar, Senegalese superstar Youssou N'Dour, Pakistani Qawwali maestro Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, jazz drummer Bill Cobham, session veteran bass player Nathan East, and many, many other friends, old and new. The resulting music is mysterious, breathtaking, dramatic. Warm. In a word, fantastic! In a sense, Gabriel took many of the best features of 1980s world music records and set them to 11, so to speak.
Put it up to 11.
11, exactly.
Passion left the world music scene with several lasting legacies. Real World Studios and Real World Records, for example, both were inaugurated with a Passion project, and both deserve their own video, if you like. Drop me a comment if you want me to tell you their story. But the legacy of the Passion sessions lived on in the spirit that light up so many real world and world music albums since. A spirit of collaboration between musicians coming from different cultures, of pleasure in discovery, of building on each other's strength. But we were saying Passion also changed film music, right? The second element is connected with the film music genre. Gabriel's music for The Last Temptation of Christ was unlike that of any other blockbuster before. Wait, that might be too bold a statement. Unlike that of any other religious blockbuster before. Contrast this music with that of Ben-Hur, King of Kings, or even Jesus of Nazareth. Great orchestral productions, really masterful and slick, but a bit conventional, aren't they? True, Jesus Christ Superstar had been different, but is nowhere as ambitious and groundbreaking as Passion. Gabriel gives us loops from field recordings and extracts of traditional folk melodies from Kurdistan. Or from Armenia. Or from other places, but always recontextualized against a background featuring synths and samplers. Or else Shankar's own double violin. Or musical instruments and singers from other cultures. Or some labor-intensive studio work, like the drone that starts the album. What you heard there was 24 different drone and feedback sounds recorded at various speeds, pitched together, mixed into one sound that is ever-changing and ever-evolving.
You're kidding, right?
Now, in a sense, Gabriel was following Scorsese's artistic vision here, but the director's brief was vague enough to leave Gabriel space to express his creativity, and the result did change the way people approached film music. Gladiator, Avatar, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Passion of the Christ, and many others. Every soundtrack, be it for a sci-fi flicks or for a historical fantasy film, every soundtrack that creates its own sonic world owes something to Passion. Either directly for their use of folk instruments out of context, for example, or indirectly trying to offer us something sounding somewhat familiar while belonging to the imagined world on the screen. What about the third key element that made Passion so groundbreaking? Well, I need a couple of seconds for that. August 1988. The Last Temptation of Christ opened worldwide. Big controversies ensued. Universal Pictures decided the accompanying soundtrack album had to be released sooner than expected. They had promised Gabriel 10 extra weeks, but no, 3 weeks would have to do. Was this meant to capitalize on the publicity? To get the whole project over with? I don't know. What I know is that Peter Gabriel didn't accept the ultimatum. Not only was he busy with the Human Rights Now tour for Amnesty International, he had no intention to rush the completion of the music. You see, there were a lot of unfinished ideas that could not make their way into the film, and Gabriel wanted to complete them. He wanted to release an album that could stand on its own as a work of art, not a hastily collected selection of film tunes to milk his or The Last Temptation's fans. Gabriel decided to pay for the completion of Passion out of his own pocket.
Money talks, people.
This determination is the third element that made Passion the first release of real-world records. The element that ultimately created a new approach to ambient music. You see, good ambient music helps define the space, enhancing it and bringing out its character. Going back to the Real World Studios in December 1988, Gabriel went beyond what was needed for a film soundtrack. When Passion was released in June 1989, images were no longer needed to venture into the imagined place Scorsese first discussed with Gabriel years before. Now a listener could experience that land using only his ears. The music gave it additional dimensions. Each piece could be fragmentary and episodic by itself, but it played a part in the bigger picture. In fact, I think the album is best experienced as an LP. As we flip the record at the end of each side, we get a little pause that allows the music to breathe. I have the album on CD, and the music tends to crowd a bit too much as the album progresses. I need time to process the journey, I guess. But do leave me a comment if your experience differs. And how did that advance ambient music, you might be asking? Well, I'm not familiar with other ambient projects that created the space and then the music defining it before Passion, and to be honest, I can't think of that many projects that did that afterwards either. There's original soundtrack 1 by Passengers, a moniker for U2 and Brian Eno, whose tracks are mostly inspired by imaginary films. And then there's another big soundtrack that I'm keeping for the suggested listening section of this video. But first, the obligatory call to action. If you like this video, please remember that I have no sponsors. Use this PayPal address here if you want to send me a small donation. Your help will be a big morale booster and an incentive on working on more videos you can watch for free. Remember, if this video made your day, give old Simon what you made. Thank you! Loving Passion and you want to know what else you could listen to? Well, you could listen to any of the records and soundtracks I name-checked during this video, but I'm going to give you another 3 options. Passion sources. This is a collection of music that inspired Peter Gabriel during the composition and recording of Passion, with liner notes by Gabriel himself. Or you could listen to another Real World Records compilation, Bliss. This one came out 9 years after Passion, and it still gives you a wide variety of great music from the Real World roster. Or, third option, you can listen to another film soundtrack that creates an imagined world, Dune. And don't tell me the music doesn't contribute to the world building made in the film as much as the cinematography or the scenery. Well, this is it for this video. How about you give a thought about your favorite soundtrack and leave me a comment with that? I'm starting a role-playing campaign soon, and some extra musical inspiration might come handy. Anyhow, my dear top hatters, this was your Simon Mas. Stick around for more music-related tales. For the moment, stay cool and keep your top hat on. Bye!